Hello and welcome to the final talk of the week here, the PAMS Blockchain Community Days 2023. And again, a special thank you to those of you who stayed with us for the previous one, perhaps have been listening to the talks all the way through the week. Before I introduce our speaker, just a couple of quick reminders. The talks are all recorded and those recordings will be available next week. Next, during the presentation, if you have got any general thoughts or comments you want to share with the audience, the people that are listening to this talk along with you, please do drop those into the chat in the sidebar on the community page. But if you have got any specific questions, please put those into the Q&A section. And remember to upvote and give a thumbs up to any other questions that you think are particularly interesting and that you'd like Scott to be able to answer at the end. And with that, I'd like to introduce your speaker, Scott Touchton. So Scott's a VP of Sales and Marketing at Switch Reward Card, and he's got an absolutely fascinating background. I was having a little look before we got onto this. He's done industries as diverse as hospitality, motorsports, gun ranges, even set up his own toy company and had a successful Kickstarter campaign and producing wooden puzzles using New Orleans food to teach basic shapes, which I think is just super cool. I was fascinated with that one. But now he's working with Switch, which is a Web3 blockchain-based financial services ecosystem. They offer debit payment solutions for traditional and cryptocurrencies around the world. And so Scott is ideally placed to be able to tell us about the challenges to mainstream adoption of blockchain and how we can overcome them. Scott, over to you.
Thanks, Gordon. You made my bio way more impressive than I did. But yeah, I know. Again, my name is Scott Touchton. I want to thank Gordon and Ali and everyone at Blockchain Professionals community for having me. This is I'm flattered and honored to be a part of this. So I am the vice president of Switch Reward Card, which is a blockchain financial services company. I'm not going to talk much about Switch here today, but more the bigger picture. But I will use some examples from my work at Switch. I would like to add, to keep everybody happy, that everything in this presentation is my personal opinions, not the opinions of Switch. Even though my opinions are right, I'd like to add, just as a little joke there, they're my opinions only, not my employers. I've been involved in the crypto space about 3 years now. First as a recreational trader, and have been full-time for over a year now. I like to view the blockchain crypto world kind of like dog years. You know, when you're trying to calculate how old your dog is, it's like one year for 7. So I kind of feel like that's when you've made it in the crypto as a professional, it's like dog years. Again, like Gordon said, my background is marketing, operations, and sales of different industries. So I think that gives me a unique perspective coming in here. And I was able to transition as many people were with COVID, kind of force some pivots. And when, with my background in sales and marketing, different industries, as well as my experience with crypto as a trader background, I was able to pivot and land at Switch. And I'm just fortunate and blessed to be a part of the wonderful team there and everything we're doing. However, today I want to talk about mainstream adoption of cryptocurrency and blockchain. We're going to talk a little bit about the we. Why do I have we in the title? And I think that goes to community. The word community is used a lot in crypto and in blockchain, but I don't think it's ever actually dove in as like what, and I think it's overused buzzword. But if you dive in, it makes sense. The community has true buy-in. Let's say if I buy an NFT for my project, I'm personally incentivized for the success of that project. I want that project to grow because the value of my individual NFT will grow. So that is community. I'm invested in that. So I want it to grow. There's a lot of examples you could try to do for Web 2 or real life that are similar, but they just don't equate as much, like a sports team. If I buy a t-shirt for a sports team I like, I'm invested in that team, but the value of my t-shirt really isn't going to go up. So it's not the same. So, here in crypto, here in blockchain, when I say we're part of the community. And I think we want the best for this community, and we want this community to grow, and it's up to us. There's a lot of things that are outside of our control, but there are things that we as community members can do. So that's kind of, there's a lot I'm going to focus on. There's a lot I'm not going to focus on because it's not necessarily things that me and you can do. Okay, so let's talk about mainstream adoption. What is mainstream adoption? There's, mainstream adoption is not new. Like different technologies have had to go through these hurdles and obstacles that crypto and blockchain are in now. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll talk about what does mainstream adoption for crypto actually mean. Is that being able to pay my rent in Bitcoin? Is that being able to get paid in Bitcoin? And then we'll talk about some of the challenges. Regulation woes, especially with this week we've had, I think is an easy one to do. Ease of use, bad actors, FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Those are easy challenges to discuss. And then how can we overcome them? Battling FUD, promoting simplification, ease of use, educating, onboarding. All these are things that we can do to help overcome those challenges. So moving right along. So mainstream adoption makes things better for everybody. So think about some of these technologies. Some of us use every single day. Television, a washing machine, electricity, automobiles, and think about how over time these technologies have improved. So if you look at early days of radio, early days of television, the signal was bad. There wasn't a lot of programming. And then look at mainstream adoption now. And see how those technologies have evolved, see how those technologies have gotten better. Talking about radio, television, early days, you had very few options for programming and the signal was bad. Now you have, numerous, hundreds of channels, hundreds of options, streaming services. All that is, in my opinion, a result of mainstream adoption of technology and the technology growing and getting better. So looking at that, with the internet, dial-up modems, and look at how far we've come. So when you look at that, you can dive in. So this is a mainstream adoption technology curve. So you can see it basically a bell curve shape, but you can see the early adopters. A lot of people might call that like bleeding edge, even forward before a cutting edge. So the innovators, then early adopters, early majority, late majority, and then laggards. And everybody could probably guess where we are right now on the scale and that previous slide where all these had to come through. So let's talk real quick. What is mainstream adoption of crypto? What does that look like? Like I mentioned earlier, can I pay my rent in Bitcoin? What is it? Is it that when you mention the word crypto, people don't say something about FTX and roll their eyes? Is it, can I get a loan for a house using a Bitcoin I have as collateral? Is it NFTs and that technology used for voting and property deeds? I mean, yeah, you could get a Nike sneaker NFT right now, but how do we move that forward? Is that 3 years? Is that 5 years? One of the in preparation for this, I asked some people like what they view as mainstream adoption of crypto, and somebody had a really poignant thing. They said mainstream adoption of something is when you use it without actually recognizing and knowing that you're using it. And I thought that was really brilliant and deep way of looking at it. So, okay, so imagine using crypto without even taking the thought to realize that you're using crypto. Is that buying groceries at the grocery store and doing a tap to pay with Ethereum or a different currency? So I think that's coming, but I think we've got a ways to go. And back to the mainstream technology adoption curve. I mean, look at like Wells Fargo as a company, and where was Wells Fargo 150 years ago, and where are they now? 150 years ago, they were stagecoaches trying not to get robbed in the Wild West by Black Bart. And now Wells Fargo is a large traditional banking institution. So another funny story. I have a friend who recently bought a house, and he wanted to, sell some crypto to pay for the house. But didn't want to create the taxable event of selling the crypto until the house offer was accepted. We had to do proof of funds for the to put in the offer on the house, and so he did a screenshot of some crypto wallets, and neither the buyer nor the seller real estate agent knew what it was. So at the closing, he actually did a mini crypto webinar to both the real estate agents and the people buying the house from him. So looking at crypto adoption right now. So and again, this is my personal opinion. I think the numbers that most people say as far as crypto adoption are overinflated and are actually lower. And I'll explain why. So I think there are, with decentralization, with KYC, with different countries, data is held differently. So how many MetaMask or Trust wallets does one person have? So if Trust Wallet says, yeah, we've assigned this many wallets, well, that could be multiple to single individuals. And there's no centralized data point for how many wallets are held out there in the wild. So in a way, I think that's a very Satoshi kind of way of doing it, that we don't know exactly how many people. I mean, we could do surveys, and I'm sure, numerous surveys have been done. But as far as actually knowing how many wallets are out there, I think that's a difficult thing to pinpoint. And that's okay. That's okay. But I think what we could do is we could look at a range. I've seen numbers as low as 4% and numbers as high as 20%. So again, I put estimates 5 to 15. Obviously, different countries, different areas of the world are faster on that scale. You look at countries like El Salvador and Ukraine have formally adopted cryptocurrency as legal tender. But then countries like Vietnam, Philippines, India are all some of the fastest growing crypto. But again, as far as what is the actual number, it's really hard to say. So if we take that number and move back to this previous slide of ours, so where are we now? So we're in that darker orange. We're in the early adopters. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. But how do we get to those later ones? How do we move up that scale? And in looking at this data, so I've got the source there. I'm not a statistics major or anything like that, but there's a lot of fun information out there. And looking at that, these different adoption personas actually have traits, and you could look at who would fall under that category and what attracts them or what appeals to them to interest them to adopt a technology. So it kind of makes sense, so early adopters, like I said, that's where I think we could all assume we are right now, willing to work through early bugs and setbacks. That's where we are right now as an industry. However, that next step that we need to get to, you've got some practical thinkers, data driven, logical. So that's where as an industry and as a community, there's that community word again, right? We need to adapt and move forward to that, to move up the scale of that into that early majority group. So I think that's really interesting, using these personas that have nothing to do with crypto. These personas have nothing to do with blockchain as far as adoption. This is just technology adoption in general. This is the same thing for the automobile. This is the same thing for the typewriter or the slide rule or the calculator. Like, these are technologies that over time have been adopted, and these personas and this bell curve apply to those technologies. So a lot of people talk about the internet and or where crypto is right now is like the internet was in 1993. So there's a fun YouTube clip of on the Today Show talking about what is the internet, and they're all kind of confused by it. Well, that clip is from 1994. So if you say crypto is the internet in 1993, right now, that kind of shows where we were with the internet, and you can see where we are now. I mean, I'm in one country, Gordon's in a different country, and we're all watching this live. So that shows where the internet is now. We'll look at the internet, in 1993. So that's kind of exciting to think that's how far we have to go. So if you look at this chart, and obviously this chart is 9 years old. Look at the question marks on the right is 2014. So when that quote was right there before Netscape, Yahoo, and Amazon. And that's where if you take that comparison to heart and you believe that comparison, which I do, I think it's accurate. You're saying that's where that's where the blockchain is right now. So you can see, well, we've got a long way to go, and that's really exciting. Okay, so challenges. Let's talk about the challenges. All these articles are just within the last week. So, I think you could talk about regulation woes and regulation on the whole. However, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that in this conversation because I think that could be a topic of its own by people a lot smarter than me. But however, there is a lot going on. There's a lot to watch for in the regulation of crypto and blockchain right now. I have what might be a controversial opinion. I welcome regulation. I think regulation would set clear boundaries of what we can do and what we can't do. I think regulation would grow institutional investment in crypto and the blockchain, as well as shift the viewpoint in mainstream media and be able to separate the good actors from the bad actors. The institutional investment would come into play both on investing in existing products as well as funding new and innovative projects within the space. And another thing about crypto is the global. So, when you're talking about, well, I want to do a borderless payment and cross country payment, or I'm sorry, cross, global payments, you're touching multiple regulation areas. Again, we've got forward-looking countries like El Salvador, and then you've got other countries that are not as forward-looking. So back to challenges, right? Like, so regulation clarity. And again, I'm not going to talk on that. I think, lawyers could host a whole blockchain week, like EPAM's doing for us. I think that could be its own thing. But it is something for mainstream adoption to happen, needs to be addressed. There needs to be clear boundaries. There needs to be what we can do, what we can't do. And honestly, like, it's a viewpoint we have at Switch. If you're doing things the right way, you've got nothing to fear. We want to do things the right way, as do a lot of other similar companies. FUD. So fear, uncertainty, and doubt. How many times has the media said that Bitcoin is dead? FUD could come in many different forms and from many different sources. And unfortunately, it could come out of ignorance or someone uneducated on the topic. It could also come from someone that's had a bad experience. Maybe someone was rug pulled previously on a project. Maybe someone lost money in crypto. Maybe they bought into a project late because their buddy told them to, and then there was somebody else's exit liquidity. And I think that's an education thing, but because they were the get rich quick crowd of crypto, which is not where we need to be moving forward. But then that person with that bad experience now becomes FUD for adoption of new people. Also, overcomplication. Why do we have, just as a fun example, why do we have to say gas fees instead of transaction fees? And I'll talk about that in a little bit here, but I think terminology in crypto and technology is more complicated than it needs to be, which makes coming into the space intimidating for new people. And I think that's something we can overcome. So FUD. So this is one of my favorite slides. So I'd like to give a hat tip to Dan Held on LinkedIn. If you don't follow him, I suggest there's a link down there at the bottom. So he shares these a lot, and they're from a Twitter account called the Pessimistic Archive. So FUD is not new to technology. So the slide rule, fast as a calculator. Okay, we know who won that war, right? The typewriter is a dangerous weapon. Anti-electricity cartoons. It looks like the guy's getting strangled by a low-hanging power line. There's another fun one that I've shared previously about from the automobile industry about people that really liked horses and didn't want automobiles. And there was a proposed legislation, I believe in Pennsylvania, that for if you were driving an automobile and you were headed down a road and someone on their horse was coming towards you, you had to pull over the automobile and cover it with a naturally covered tarp, so the horse wouldn't be scared. So the horse would pass you by. If the horse was still scared, you had to disassemble your automobile, or they were proposing. So talking about regulation, that's some proposed regulation from over 100 years ago, that you need to take your car apart so it didn't scare the horse. So we all know who won these and where we are now with these technologies. So like I said, so battling FUD, but FUD is not new. FUD is not new just for technology. I think every new technology will have FUD, and some of that might be by the old technology. Like I said, the people that really like horses didn't like automobiles. So challenges. I talked on this one briefly. I think terminology is overcomplicated and intimidating, and I think that's something that we as a community can work to improve and make things easier for new people coming in. Bad actors, I think, and I'm not proud of this or happy about it, but I think a lot of people in the crypto space now, at one point or another, have been rug pulled or have lost money in a scam that they at the time they believed in, and or bought into a project that turned out to not be great. And I think in a way, a lot of people kind of joke that that's a rite of passage for joining crypto, but I don't think that's the I don't think that's the right way we need to do moving forward. And not necessarily just bad actors, but bad information as well. And again, as a community, I think that's something that we can improve. Solutions. Let's talk solutions. That's the fun thing, right? So one thing is supporting the brands. We've got some Web 2 brands coming into Web 3. And I think we as a community can support those brands that we see are doing things the right way. Here's a good example and a bad example, right? Nike is doing things the right way with their swoosh, the swoosh.eth. Porsche had a little bit more of a trouble with their project. So I think like I said, as a consumer, we can support the brands that are coming in. So a fun example of this is Bitcoin Pizza Day. So, Bitcoin Pizza Day, just passed recently. It's basically a huge holiday for the crypto community. It was talking about adoption. It was the very first time that Bitcoin was used as a purchase method of an in real life good or service. So a guy posted in a chat, said, "Hey, I will send you Bitcoin if you buy me a pizza," and created a barter. Okay, so this was from Papa John's, right? Do you think that Papa John's tweeted about it this year in 2023 about Bitcoin Pizza Day? I know. So a lot of people did. We at Switch made a fun video where our president went and bought pizza and brought it in for all the developers, and we made a fun video. And that was as a fan and a student myself of digital marketing, those are the things that I like to do, and I like to watch and see what other brands do. However, so this is what Papa John's tweeted. If you see May 22nd, Papa John's didn't even tweet on May 22nd. So I think that shows where they are with adoption, even though they think of the campaign they could have done about Bitcoin Pizza Day, where they started it all. Yet on Bitcoin Pizza Day, Papa John's didn't tweet at all. Pizza Hut, Little Caesars, Domino's, they all tweeted, but no one tweeted, no major pizza company tweeted about Bitcoin Pizza Day. So I think that shows from just a fun viewpoint on the digital marketing industry where they are. Simplification. So again, I mentioned the gas fees example. So I've got a list of terms and definitions that someone did. They made the loop on LinkedIn. So I don't know who the original author for these was, but basically they broke down complicated terms or terms that we use every day, but they broke them down into digestible content. So Web3, just use your own web internet or internet 3.0. A blockchain is just a digital record system. So I'll go through these. Mining. I think mining is an extremely complicated and confusing term to a lot of people. It's just verifying transactions. So I think when you phrase it and kind of water it down like a dummy's guide to, I think it makes adoption easier. It makes things less intimidating. A DAO, a DAO is a community operated organization. I think, we're making things harder for ourselves, and we're making it harder for people coming in. This list, I could share it, but this list like I said, made the laps on LinkedIn. I thought was fantastic. So one thing I like to do is also take technical things and try to explain them with non-technical analogies. So I came across, and I gave the source down at the bottom, my favorite blockchain analogy I've ever come across. So the picture's from The Sandlot, big movie in my childhood. Gordon, I don't know if you've seen that one, but I highly suggest it. It's kind of a great coming of age movie about baseball. So let's talk about a playground sports game, playground baseball game, soccer, football, whatever, but a bunch of kids playing in the playground. Okay. So there is no referee. If there was a referee, that would be centralization, right? So you've got all these kids playing the game. They're keeping score. There's no scoreboard. There's no way to track the score other than all the kids are tracking in their head. Well, that's the distributed ledger. The consensus is the passive consent of the rules. They all know what counts as a score. They all know what counts as a foul. So they are managing themselves through consensus by passively monitoring these rules. It's immutable, meaning one kid can't just change the score. He can argue, hey, that counts. Hey, that should count. Hey, that should count. But unless he gets consensus amongst everyone to agree, he cannot just change the score. It doesn't count because the distributed ledger is the agreed score amongst all the other players. So very simplified, analogy, but I think that's what we need to do as a community to educate people with these very complicated processes. Another analogy I've recently been sharing a lot, I'm not sure where I came across it, but is a blockchain is like a homeowners association for a community. And, you've got a lot of people coming together with a shared interest, and they're working together and they're voting across bylaws or the charter that runs that blockchain. And then that charter manages it. Someone could propose a change if they're a member of that blockchain. But it's basically someone had to build it and set it up and sell the lots. But then that homeowners association took over and has that decentralization. So education. So this one's for you, my friend Gordon. Fiat. A lot of people talk about fiat. Obviously the one we're talking about most is the one on the left, not the car. So, as an industry, so Switch specifically, we do a lot of webinars and educational webinars. And I've been surprised at some of the questions of people coming to these webinars. And I've had people ask, about fiat. And I've had people surprisingly think that, the US is still in a gold standard with the US dollar. So educating people, and I think most crypto companies or all crypto companies should have this as part of their marketing is crypto education, blockchain education. And I think it's great that we're doing this today. I think this is part of that. What is a cryptocurrency? What is a fiat? What is the difference between the two? What are the pros and cons of both? And I think, that kind of content will push towards mainstream adoption as well. Security and safety. So this is a fun meme, but educating people on seed words. I've had a lot of people, or I've helped a lot of people set up accounts online, and a lot of people are complain or get upset or frustrated with seed words, and they're like, oh, this is. But if you stop and explain to them why we have things like that in place, then they get it, like, hey, these are the true keys. Like, you have these seed words. This is your keys, your crypto. So once you explain it like that, I think a lot more people are more apt to adapt the technology and go through the oops if they understand the why of that's what they're doing. A custodial versus non-custodial. Well, why? Why do I want a non-custodial wallet? And I think if we as a community take the time, and we as marketers take the time to educate people on that, I think people will adapt to that quicker, but we also have to help them. So that's all I have today. I appreciate y'all hosting me. I appreciate Gordon. I appreciate everybody here. I was I had a little technical difficulty with sharing my video, so I apologize for that. But it's the Today Show. What is the internet from 1994? If anybody wants to find it on YouTube. But Gordon, anything I can add or any questions?
Me back on screen. There we go. So that was great. Lovely. Thanks for that, Scott. I think this mainstream adoption is absolutely the key. And I think what you said early on was the key point for me, at least, which is that it just becomes how things are done. You stop thinking about the fact that it's blockchain. Obviously, a lot of what you've talked about tends to be kind of the financial side. And when people think of blockchain, they often think of, kind of Bitcoin and Ether and stuff like that. They think of the currencies rather than perhaps necessarily some of the real world applications of it. And I think for us in should we say, kind of Western developed societies, because largely speaking, we tend to trust our centralized authorities. That's perhaps less of an issue. But if you are in less developed countries, for example, your land ownership is a prime one, particularly kind of on the African continent, where suddenly, oh, no, that's not your land. My brother owns your land. So having some kind of decentralized, immutable, non-tamperable record of who actually owns stuff is vital. I know certainly Cardano partnered with the Ethiopian sort of education ministry to provide qualifications. I mean, again, a lot of people, perhaps should we say, embellish their CVs or not entirely truthful about whether they did or didn't get qualifications. Having blockchains that actually allow you to verify that I think is absolutely vital. So one thing you mentioned towards the end, though, kind of a question for you, which is, I get about kind of seed words and not your keys, not your coins, all of that sort of stuff. But given how bad most people are at remembering passwords, how do you kind of square that circle? Because if you forget your password and you can't log into a system, well, generally there's I forgot my password and you get it back. If you forget your seed words or your kind of phrases, and suddenly you lose access to all your money or all your crypto, that's a bit more serious. So for mainstream adoption, I think getting over that kind of hurdle is really important. So have you got any thoughts about that?
Absolutely. So I don't know if you're aware what Ledger as a company just went through. So basically, Ledger was trying to create a cold storage wallet with retrievable seed phrases. And for an adoption product, I think it was fantastic. They and that was their drive. However, they got a black eye in the community because it's pushing towards centralization and other people holding your passwords, which they argued defeats the purpose. I'm not trying to take a side either way. I'm just trying to say that you have people trying to innovate here, but then you also have people pushing back and saying, hey, you're defeating the purpose and you're creating a centralized location. So do we as users need to come up with best practices of how to store our passwords? Or do we want to rely on someone else? And I don't have the answer. I'm not providing the answer, but I'm saying that is something, because the other thing is, a lot of people, when they're setting up an account, might do a screenshot on their phone of their seed recovery phrases, or might have an Excel sheet of seed recovery phrases. Well, there are malicious software that can search for a string of random words and social engineer, and now they have your seed recovery phrases. So again, I don't have the answer, but I knew that, in looking at the struggle that Ledger had trying to be innovative, there are also some proposals within the Ethereum community. So when you look at, ERC20 token is 20 refers to the proposal from the Ethereum community. So NFT is ERC 400 blank. Well, now there's proposals in the Ethereum community to facilitate better handling and better creation of seed recovery words where it is more user friendly. But yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you that we've got to find a better way, or from my perspective, what's easier for me is to educate people. It's easier for me if I have a friend that I'm introducing to crypto, I can educate them on why it's important to have those keys, why it's important to have those seed phrases, and say, hey, maybe get somebody from at the Apple store one time told me that they write all their passwords down, put them in a Ziploc bag, and put the Ziploc bag inside a box inside their freezer.
That's definitely cold storage.
Is right. Different kind of cold storage. Good one. Right there. I asked for dad jokes. You got it, Gordon. Great job. But yeah. So like, is that the best way to do it? Probably not. But if that's what the guy that works at the Apple store is suggesting to people, means there's some room for innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thought that occurred to me when you were talking about the NFT side of things, to kind of bring this back to perhaps some of the announcements that we've seen, just over the early part of this week with the Vision Pro from Apple and this push towards kind of augmented reality and spending more time in there. One of the things that I'm aware of, for kind of the NFT side of things is some of the premium clothing brands, and some of them are EPAM's clients, actually producing effectively digital clothing or skins for avatars, which are verifiable, in game. And I'm just wondering if things like Vision Pro get more adoption and people do actually start spending more time in the metaverse. I know it had sort of a lot of hype, and then it's died away again because the experience hasn't been particularly great. But as that starts to grow, do you think that might be one of the mainstream adoptions of blockchain, to actually say, yes, this is my sort of unique copy of, a Burberry coat or something like that?
Absolutely. Well, so if you think about adoption, so it's generational, right? So I grew up with TV, right? My kids will grow up with internet. So TV was no big deal to me. The internet is no big deal to my kids. The internet, I think, still is pretty cool. So this newer generation, if they grow up with playing with an NFT skin in a game, that's their adoption level. EA Sports and Nike just announced a collaboration where you could use the NFT of your Nikes in the game you're playing on EA Sports. Now they just announced it. I don't think you could do it yet, but that's a level. So now you're introducing all these fans of EA Sports to NFTs. So they're going to want to go get the Nike NFT so they could play with these different sneakers in the game. And that's their adoption generationally. And then there's also I'm familiar with an organization, Gala Games. So Gala Games has a lot of different games on the blockchain, and you could, if I owned NFTs, I could put them back in the game, and then as other people use those NFTs, I could receive incentivized rewards for other people using my NFT when I'm not using it. So I think that's just another form of introducing another audience. Obviously, gamers are forward thinking with technology and forward moving with technology. But I think just little things like that, and like I mentioned earlier, like supporting the brands that are supporting the technology is another thing that we as a community could do.
Yeah, and that loops back to one of the early things that you said about, as you said, if you rave about your latest band, it doesn't increase the value necessarily of the T-shirt that you're wearing, unless perhaps it was a limited edition from a concert that becomes kind of a seminal concert in the history of music, But that your comments about rug pulls, the concern I think I have is that by introducing a financial incentive into that, kind of promoting your community, it inherently has a tendency to attract bad actors because they're simply after the financial reward really than necessarily a genuine growth of the community. And I know, I understand why you're not sort of trying to provide answers, but what's your thoughts around perhaps some ways that you could balance that genuine value in, owning a part of the community against the financial incentive becoming the primary reason for people doing it?
I think one thing important about that is if I want to buy into a project, right? If I want to buy an NFT, if I want to do something to support with my personal money to support like an NFT project. I need to be doing it because I believe in the project, not because I want to have a financial return. And if, hey, I'm going to try to flip this. I think we saw that a couple of years ago, and it was short lived. And now you see, like, I think Logan Paul paid $5 million for some NFT, and now it's worth $100. Or you see stories like that now. But like, if I see an NFT project and like, hey, that's cool, they're being innovative, I want to be a part of that. I think that's where we as and yeah, that's a little altruistic, right? That's optimistic, but not everybody's like that. But I think that's, as a community, where we need to be right now. Am I buying this because it's the Pepe coin and Pepe's cool, or am I buying, adoption on things like that? I think the financial incentive is alluring to a lot of people, but to say, hey man, I want to buy this because I want to play with my Nike sneakers in the EA game because that's cool and that's what I want to do and I want to support, not like I'm going to get rich on buying these NFTs for Nike and putting them in games and trying to sell them to these kids. I think that's kind of the difference. And like I said, that's very altruistic and forward thinking and optimistic, but I think that's where the growth will come.
Yeah, I think community is, through all of human history, community is what brings us together. So hopefully we'll be able to get away from, come for the money and we stay for the fields.
There was one other recent news story of a rug pull I'll share is, and I can't remember the name, but a porn star released an NFT collection and sold out. And then was like, yeah, we're going to do all these and we're going to roll out this and we're going to build this ecosystem. And then as soon as she got like the $2 million, she dumped the whole project. And so now all these people are like, wait, so what about all these roadmap plans? And all these people are complaining on Twitter and social media and Reddit and Discord. And everybody else is like, so you bought an NFT from a porn star and so I think what was your incentive there? And their money, right? But I think, are you buying, why are you buying that? What is your incentive for buying that project? And are you surprised that it got rug pulled?
Yeah, certainly, definitely buyer beware with some of this stuff.
Right.
For sure. All right, I think we need to wrap it up there because we're coming up on the close of the conference, but that's been absolutely fascinating. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to you, Scott. Thanks for everything that you shared, and we look forward perhaps to working with you again on Community Days next year.
I love it. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.